Howdy, Bucks. Hope you're having a great day. I'm going to turn this a little bit so you can see me a little better. Get a good look at my mustache. Um, so I'm going to continue talking about a few things here. This video is going to be about the Stamp Act and what happened as a result of it. So what have we covered with what's leading up to this war? Well, you've got the French and Indian Wars over, but there are a lot of Native Americans still in the frontier. And the king did have to send some soldiers out to prevent the French from coming back and to kind of protect against the Native Americans. So that cost money. The king told the colonists that you can't move into the frontier, and he did that with the Proclamation of 1763, which basically drew that line along the edge of the Appalachian Mountains. No one was really supposed to go past that line and settle into the frontier. Of course, they did anyways, as they protested that, and they went against the king and Parliament's wishes. So that was sort of the first thing that the king and Parliament did to really upset the colonists. Then, of course, the British are in debt big time from all the wars that they've been fighting around the world. So one way that they can try to pay those debts back is by taxing the colonists, and they do that with the Sugar Act. Okay, and that was a tax on any imported sugar goods, including things like molasses, right? And of course, colonists that use molasses and sugar and things like that are going to be very upset with that, especially people that are making rum out of the molasses and out of the sugar. So it's going to cut into the profits of people that are using sugar for their businesses. So that's upsetting the colonists, right? And then let's continue here, because there's another act that's really going to hit the pocketbooks, hit the wallets of a lot of just regular people, and that was the Stamp Act. So I'm going to read it, and then you guys follow along, and then I'll be stopping and talking about it as we go. The Stamp Act. So an even more unpopular law was the Stamp Act, passed by Parliament in early 1765. The Stamp Act required that all colonists buy special tax stamps for all kinds of products and activities. Now, key word there, products and activities. And this is all colonists. Okay, so if you buy the certain products and if you have certain services done. So let's look at these. The stamps had to be placed on newspapers. How many people bought newspapers back then? There was no TV. Okay. Newspapers, wills. So if you wanted to make a will, any license that you needed. Let's say you needed to get a business license, a license to purchase, to own farm animals, or whatever license it may be. Maybe it's a license to dock your ship at the pier. So any licenses. Insurance policies. Tons of people had insurance policies. Land titles. Anytime you sold land to someone, you had to get this tax stamp. Contracts and other types of documents. So all those things that so many people use, newspapers, wills, licenses, insurance policies, land titles, contracts, and all these other documents, which a lot of people would use, and that they needed, you had to do. It's not like if you wanted to get married, you had to get a license to get married, just like you do today. So it's not like they had a choice in a lot of these matters. So automatically, a lot of people had to start paying taxes on all these everyday things that they had to do. Okay, so you can imagine that protests really ramped up with this. So let's keep reading here. Protests against the Stamp Act were widespread. Virginia's House of Burgesses passed several resolutions declaring that it alone had the right to tax the people of Virginia. So let's pause for a second. Virginia's House of Burgesses is sort of Virginia's own little group of lawmakers for its colony. So if they ever needed to, let's say, work on the roads or something in Virginia, they would go to the House of Burgesses, which is a group of people that represented everyone that lived in Virginia. And they would get together. These representatives would get together and they would vote on things, and they would decide should we tax our own people to fix these roads, or should we tax our own people to maybe build some piers, or so. Virginia had its own little way of taking care of its business, right? Well, this says in the book right here, it says Virginia's House of Burgesses passed several resolutions declaring that it alone, that only they had the right to tax the people of Virginia. So what are they saying? They're saying that only Virginians can tax the people of Virginia. Only Virginia can tax itself. Only Virginia can make decisions if it's going to tax itself, not the king and not Parliament. This is huge, because it's basically saying that no, the king and Parliament back in Britain does not have control over us here in Virginia. Okay, let's keep reading. Talking about Patrick Henry. Patrick Henry, one of the youngest members of that body of the House of Burgesses, made an emotional speech attacking the law. Henry ended his speech with a reference to the murder of Julius Caesar in ancient Rome. If you don't know the story, Julius Caesar was killed. He was a leader of Rome who was killed by members of the government back in the Roman days, because they did not like how powerful he had become. Okay, when Patrick Henry said, here we are right here, when Patrick Henry said that some good Americans would do the same to King George III. So basically saying that people might do that to their own king of Britain. Cries of treason were hurled against him. Henry replied, what was his reply to that? If this be treason, make the most of it. So he was not backing down in speaking out against the king and all these taxes. Okay. Let's keep reading. Other colonial assemblies followed Virginia's example. So other colonies kind of said the same thing. They're like, we control things here in the colonies. We should be able to just tax ourselves. And look what else happened. Merchants, here I am right here at the top. Merchants in New York, Boston, and Philadelphia organized a boycott, an organized campaign to refuse to buy certain products of British goods. The protests spread to every colony. So how did they respond? This is a wonderful way to make a statement, right? Is to refuse to buy things that were coming in from Britain. Now, you might not think that that's too big of a deal, but think about if you are a person in England that's sending things to the colonies. You want to send them to the colonies for people to buy. And the people in those colonies are protesting, and they're saying, nope, we're going to boycott. We're not going to buy anything from Britain. Now, that may not necessarily hurt the British government, but those people that live in England are going to be pretty upset because no one's buying their stuff. And who are they going to complain to? They're going to complain to the king and Parliament, and they're going to complain a lot. And so that's what happened. People in New York, Boston, and Philadelphia organized a boycott. They organized to buy certain products that came from Britain, and the protests spread to every single colony. So all the colonies are coming together and saying, all right, the British want to tax our stuff. We're going to not buy anything from people in Britain, and they're going to have to deal with those people complaining to the king. Let's scroll down a little bit. In October, delegates from 9 colonies met in New York for the Stamp Act Congress. So basically a group of people that are getting together to talk about the Stamp Act. What did they decide to do? Here it says right here, they sent a petition, a written request to a government addressed to the king and Parliament. This position demanded the end to both the Sugar Act and the Stamp Act. So what did they do to protest here? First, they boycotted, right? They refused to buy British goods. And they sent a petition to the government. They sent a letter to the king from 9 out of all the colonies, and that basically said, we demand that you end these taxes. Okay? And let's see if it worked. Yay, the protest did work. The protest worked. In 1766, Parliament repealed the Stamp Act.